getting it done.
Beat writer from the Sacramento Bee, Jason Anderson. What have you been up to these days, Jason? You been busy at all?
Yeah, I'm trying to get the Robin Williams scoop. I saw Monty and Wes and Jonah huddled in the hallway last night, so maybe they're working on something.
Yeah. Well, can you tell us anything about that? You know, we understand based on what we think we know that the Kings might not be done. Do you have any inkling as to what they might even be trying to do between now and the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, maybe an inkling, but nothing. You know, nothing I can really report at this time. I just think they're still working, and I think that given some of what came back in the De'Aaron Fox trade with some of the draft picks they were able to acquire there, I think that opens up some lanes for them to maybe circle back on some of the previous discussions they've had, and who knows what else might be out there. But they have a little more ammo now to go out and dangle some picks and some trade exceptions if they can figure out, a way to use one or more of those. I think they may not be done, but these things are complicated and hard to get completed. And we'll see what they can do between now and Thursday.
Hey, Jason, we were just having that conversation about, what moves they actually can make. And do you see them, possibly moving any players, or is it just trade exception or bust in terms of whatever moves they make?
Yeah, I mean, you would think that there's a little bit they could do as far as players go, but I just don't know, the depth they're so thin right now, and they've only got, I think, 13 on the roster at the moment. So that, there can't be a lot of guys going out. And just the salaries, you're looking at a lot of, minimum salaries. Trey's the only thing substantial that I think they'd be looking to move unless they were to look at somebody else like in the core, 5 or 6, that they were going to go take a bigger swing. So, at this point, I think you're talking, and Trey is the one I'm specifically talking about where they, if they decided to move Trey, there's enough money there that you could go out and, maybe combine that with another player or two. But again, you can't, there just aren't a lot of bodies there in depth. And right now, I think you certainly need Trey right now as it's currently constructed. So, we'll see. We'll see what they can do.
Jason Anderson from the Bee, nice enough to join us. Would you say, based on what we saw last night, that as much as the Kings personally may miss De'Aaron Fox, as a team, they are ready to move forward and get out from under this cloud of dysfunction that's been swirling around the club?
Yeah, I mean, and they really don't have a choice. As much as so many guys there are going to miss De'Aaron, and you could feel that last night in the room. Some of the younger players, who are going through this kind of for the first time, they always take that kind of hard. I can remember the year that, Shumpert and Justin Jackson were traded. I think it was De'Aaron's second year, third year. And literally De'Aaron and I'm not going to say De'Aaron was in tears, but there were emotions like in that locker room at the time. And so these things hit certain guys hard. The vets are a little more hardened to the business side and all of that goes on. But yeah, so there were mixed emotions, but things were just getting so uncomfortable. And as I wrote after the game in OKC, they were describing to me just some negative energy and bad vibes, like in the locker room that were kind of swirling around them. And so now they're at a point where they can kind of move on. They'll bring Zach in, and DeMar is happy to have Zach coming in. I wrote today about a conversation I had with DeMar last night, he kind of cleared up some misconceptions about his relationship with Zach, and that, for some, he doesn't really understand why, people have talked about how maybe they didn't vibe real well on or off the court. And he said that couldn't be further from the truth. He described him as like a brother and a best friend, one of his best friends. And is very excited about having Zach come in and join this group. And really another thing that came out of that conversation that I wrote today, there's a lot of really interesting comments. I would encourage people just to go read it. But DeMar recently said on a podcast that, with Fox, apparently going out, he might have to reconsider his future in Sacramento. He came here to play with Fox and Malik and Domas, and, he was pretty candid in saying, we'll have to see how it goes, and admitting that he might have to rethink things. But so I asked him last night, like, where are you at now on that? And he said, no, that it kind of alleviated his concerns. He said, with a guy like Zach coming in, who, and especially with their relationship, that definitely helps to put your mind at ease. So, I think that's all good stuff for them, as far as like sort of rebuilding, some cohesiveness and some chemistry and bringing some good vibes back into the room.
Our guy, Jason Anderson of the Sacramento Bee, joining us. He was out there last night in Minnesota. Jason, to put a cap, I guess, on De'Aaron Fox, for me, this tenure here, where do you think things went wrong with the Kings and Fox? How did we get to this point?
Well, they just, De'Aaron has his own goals. He has, he's obviously represented by Clutch and Rich Paul now, who wants to maximize his brand. De'Aaron's a brand now. He's not just a player; he's a brand, and that you need to win, and you need to be in a situation where you can continue to build on that stuff. And it just took a while. The Kings have tried for a couple of years now to add some more pieces, and they have. I mean, this roster is much better than it was when Monty and Wes came in and took the job. So there's no question that they've made the roster better. But there are some prerequisites in this league at this point where you need size and length. You still have to have the shooting. You have to be able to play defense. And some of those pieces have not really come together for them. And I think that's probably where, some of the frustration came from on De'Aaron's side of things, and the reluctance to commit long-term. And then, it puts the Kings in a position where they have to be good stewards of their own roster and their financials and all of those things. And it just put them both in an awkward spot where, some tough decisions had to be made.
Jason Anderson from the Bee. Make sure you read the very interesting piece he has today. Pieces he has sacbee.com. Jason, what's your sense of how happy the Kings truly are with the return in the De'Aaron Fox deal?
Yeah. We haven't talked to anybody about it yet, as far as the front office goes. I think we may get a press conference in the next day or so. I don't know if they'll do that tomorrow or maybe wait until the trade deadline passes. And then we'll really, know better. But, I think that Zach's a great player. He's having a resurgent season this year after having the foot surgery last year. Career highs in shooting, field goal percentage, 3-point percentage. He's about as good of a player as you could bring back in a deal like this, I think. If you were going to really nitpick, and I don't know how they feel about the draft picks they were able to get back. A lot of people think, maybe you should have been able to do a little bit better there in terms of firsts and just the quality of the firsts. They got 3, but one of them, is not going to be a first-round pick. It's Charlotte's, and they're not going to make the playoffs, and that's a lottery-protected pick. So that's going to convey as 2 seconds, which will probably be 2 pretty good seconds. You'll probably be top of the second round with those. But they didn't get any of the unprotected Atlanta picks that San Antonio had or anything like that. So if anything, I think maybe there's they may look back and wish or hope that, not wish or hope, but think that they could have maybe gotten a little bit more out of it on that side of things. But I'm not privy to these those conversations behind closed doors, and if the Spurs weren't budging and the Kings just felt like they had to go ahead and get a deal done, this very well may have been the best they could do.
Jason, when you look at the roster now, we know there's still some holes, but when you look at the starting 5, you bring in Zach LaVine alongside Monk, DeRozan, Keegan, and Domas. What's the key, in your opinion, to making all that fit out on the court?
Yeah, look, I think it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting group right now. Malik is the point guard of this team now. And that's an interesting dynamic I wrote about last night, where Malik came here to play alongside Fox and never dreamed he'd be, you know, the one taking over for him. And yet here we are. But Malik is a gifted playmaker. He's their best pick and roll ball handler. He has a great feel for the pick and roll with Domas. And you know, now, you know, you take Fox out of this lineup and you put Malik, you know, in it. Not that he wasn't in it, but you've got shooting. You've got more shooting now around these guys. Domas is knocking down threes. So you got Malik. You've got LaVine, who's shooting 44% from three. You got DeRozan, who's been very capable this year. His percentage isn't great, but he's had stretches where he's really knocked down the three. You got Keegan, who just looked tremendous last night early. And you know, I think Keegan's been different since he took a couple games off to let his foot and his ankle get right. And so, you know, I think the key might be Malik and how well he handles like this bigger stage and a new opportunity to be the primary like ball handler and facilitator. Of course he has help with Domas being able to kind of orchestrate things and, you know, LaVine can even bring the ball up and those things. But if Malik can really settle into this role and play under control and pick up like the finer points of being a starting point guard in the NBA, they might start cooking with this group offensively. And then, you know, you get to the defensive side, which I think continues to be the question. How well are they going to be able to guard with this group?
Jay, we appreciate your time very much. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow night.
All right, guys. Thank you.
All right, Jason
Have a
Anderson.
good day.
Yeah, you too. Sacbee.com. The one thing that concerns me about Malik, I'm not concerned about him playing point guard.